Hi, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy. We are on the grand finale day of our 2021 Pulpwood Queen Girlfriend Weekend Slumber Party. And we are so excited because today we are jam-packed with a lot of content for our Pulpwood Queen writers, our Pulpwood Queen authors, and for our book club members to know what goes on in the publishing world. So this is a very important day. Thank you to everybody who joined me at church this morning. I'm wearing my Sunday crown. I was there with our author, Henry G. Britton, at the First Presbyterian Church in Fairfax, Virginia, where I happen to have a podcast friend, Sean Fargedy, and also Kimberly Citrone runs our Pulpwood Queens of Northern Virginia from there. So it was really exciting to be there. And what for those that haven't seen it, if you go to the link that we sent you in the program, you can watch the church service because they tape everything and it goes up on YouTube. So do watch it because you were all recognized, make comments. It was wonderful because Henry was surprised and because he was recognized for his 20 years of service at the church this morning. I was so happy to be there, and because they said he's such a builder. And you know what he is? He's a builder of bridges. His City of Peace is a wonderful book. Please read it. Next up on the agenda, I want to bring Mandy Haynes up to the top of the page with me, if I possibly can, Doug. Yes, Mandy and I have been on the phone talking about all the wonderful things and all the work that she's done behind the scenes, putting up all of your websites, emails, answering your questions, getting people on board. And this has been a conversation that's been going for some time, but I'm very proud to announce that as a Tawana, which was the executive director of the Pulpwood Queens Book Club Reading Nation, that I lost several years ago. She ran everything behind the scenes, and she was the executive director of the Pulpwood Queens International Book Club. We didn't have anybody to fill that role. But after everything that I've seen Mandy has done this weekend and everything we've been talking about in the months prior to this, I'm proud to announce that Mandy Haynes will be the executive director of the Pulpwood Queens International Book Clubs. Thank you, Mandy. Mandy, I've got to change all of this up on the book submission page on the Pulpwood Queen website, but Mandy will need to be sent a book too, because we're both going to be reading and picking the books for our 2022 year, and she needs to get copy, and she'll be working behind the scenes diligently to bring all the Pulpwood Queens members, authors, writers, everybody on board in everything that we're doing. So congratulations, Mandy.
Thank you, Kathy.
I bow to my new queen. I bow to my new queen. Yay!
Thank you.
And please congratulate her on her website because we're really thrilled about this. Now, I am very excited. I want to bring Bob Gray up onto the top of the screen. Robert Gray is with Shelf Awareness. It is the publisher insider daily blog that I go to every day. It's where I've discovered wonderful authors like Peter Golden. I read everything that Robert or Bob writes. I just shared something right before Girlfriend Weekend. You can check it out at shelf-awareness.com.
Shelf dash, but if you Google Shelf Awareness, you'll get there as well.
But so many of our authors are featured. I try to share something every day or multiple times a week on what they work so hard to bring to our attention, because I don't know about all of you, but I do not hear from any of the big five publishing companies very much, except for Simon & Schuster. And they've been really wonderful about getting authors to us this year. But it's hard. It's really hard for me to connect now with them because everybody's social distancing. So Bob is a wonderful resource for me and for working here out of my little cabin in the woods called Murphy's Law and running this international book club. So Bob, good to see you.
It's great to see you. And I should say that I'm one of probably 24 people full-time at Shelf. So I'm one of the cogs in the wheel, although I've been there almost 15 years.
Well, I'm in conversation today with Robert because I think everybody really needs more of an insider guide, whether you're a book club member, whether you're a reader, writer, or author. We really need to know what is transpiring in the book publishing world today. So if you could just give us an overview of, I love your bookshelves, by the way. I've got books everywhere.
This is actually my library. This is my downstairs in the house.
I would give anything for all those shelves because I have them piled up all around me. You can't really
Oh,
see.
I have that too.
If you turn around, I mean, if you go around the room, they're literally stepping over. I think I'm a hoarder because I have so many books. But anyway, let's start that discussion. Let's talk about what's happening.
Well, I was just thinking, actually, you had asked me that question on January, what is today, 17, 2020. My answer would have been, I mean, my particular focus is on, as you know, independent bookstores, especially. But if you had asked me last year on this same day, I was 3 days away from going to Baltimore for the American Booksellers Association Winter Institute, and I would have said everything is amazingly great. You know, bookstores are really doing well. The ongoing theme then was a renaissance of independent bookselling. The news was all good. Everybody was going in very happy. And then I flew back from Baltimore at the end of a year ago next week. And I sat on my in the seat on my plane, and the guy next to me was sanitizing everything around him. And there was a seat between us, but I looked over and I thought, what's that about? And you know, 2 weeks later, then we became a different industry, which has been the case for the past year. So the answer is, who knows, which is not the answer you want to get from someone coming in. And a lot of folks on here already know last year was tough on everybody. Books were moved, publishers moved scheduled books into the fall. Now they move books into 2021. Some authors got canceled. Publishers are swallowing up publishers. There's a lot going on, but I think right now it's all about adaptation, which to some extent it always has been, but 2020 really taught us you'd better be ready literally for anything to going into this business. It's not like any of us were making high profits when things were going good.
It's true. It's so true. You know, back when I saw you in New York City, I was already seeing changes occur because I hadn't been at Book Expo in some time. And I had gone back taking my Pulpwood Queens on a literary tour of New York. And because of the Strand, the wonderful independent bookstore there, they sponsored my book club literary adventure attendees as power readers.
Yeah, I remember.
Go to Book Expo. And I found out that because I am now a woman of age, that I had become invisible. I had my two daughters with me who had on their Pulpwood Queen shirts and their tiaras, and they come up to me and they've got swag bags, stacks of bags of books. I couldn't get anybody to talk to me. So I was seeing a change.
Yeah.
And I am a chameleon anyway. I have learned to reinvent myself over and over and over, because if you're not willing to accept technology and move forward, you're going to be left behind. So this virtual online event has been a learning experience. We've had, this is a Zoomathon. And so every night, I've been on YouTube trying to learn the new technology, and I'm an old cat learning new tricks. And I have to tell you, it's a struggle for me. And so we're all just kind of working our way through this sea of information that's just blasting at us 90 miles an hour. And so with the publishing houses, how are you getting your information?
Well, in fact, my job, I really can best talk about it from the perspective of what my day, my daily, say, job description is. And oddly enough, that hasn't changed that much. I mean, because we were an online publication to start with,
Yeah.
Our channels of information, things like press releases or contacting people for interviews or that kind of thing, we really didn't miss a beat. With the challenge came in other parts of our company where, because we're a free subscription newsletter, so we're paid for by advertising. There was far more pressure on those folks, on our advertising department,
Yeah.
than on us, because actually, by the time we got to April, it was clear that we were going to become an information source, one of only two or three on a daily basis. And it actually became an adrenaline thing at that point. We were, I was working longer hours than I did when I was 30, partly because there was so much happening and it changed every single day for a long while. And it still is. I mean, I cover a lot of international stuff, and the lockdowns and regulations change in Europe almost weekly now because of developed things that happen. So for us, it didn't change that much in terms of the information flow. We also do a lot of Google alerts for newspaper articles on covering a little bookstore in Texas that might not get national coverage. We'll see an article in a small paper, and if it's an interesting quote or story, we bring that into our conversation. So self-awareness becomes as much, which is a word you and I both love. It really it is a daily conversation as much as it is a news venue, but it's also a conversation with the industry, and at all levels, essentially, including, well, I mean, maybe not customers, but I was a bookseller for 15 years before I joined them. So I spent a long time at that last 3 or 4 feet where a book leaves the industry and goes out into the world. So I kind of brought that with me into this world anyway.
You're a wonderful, wonderful resource for me. And, our book vendor for this event is a bookstore I told you about that opened in Somerville, South Carolina. Sherry Staunch's Main Street Reads has created a virtual bookstore. We support independence. And I know better than anybody because I used to have the only hair salon bookstore in the country. And unfortunately, it closed. When you don't sell a book in a year, and the profit margins are so low anyway, I knew it was time to move on. And so I've thrown myself into, the book club and keeping it going. But I did notice significantly that when I closed the bookstore, I lost all the publisher interest. And what they don't realize is that when I pick a book club and 800 chapters across the country and throughout the world, we're now the largest meeting and discussing book club that brings our authors into the, conversation. We can help authors get out there in a big way. So hopefully the word will eventually get out that we're getting so big. I'm hoping people will pay more attention.
Well, I think
you always have, Bob. You've always supported the Pulpwood Queens and Timber Guys Book Club, and I can't thank you enough. I can't.
And you're welcome. I just really was thinking that about the time that you were closing Beauty in the Book, that was almost in the same kind of time frame when advanced readers copies and catalogs were beginning to go digital. Yeah. So a lot of people who used to get, far more galleys than they even wanted, just pouring into their shops, were suddenly getting e-galleys. And in some case that is certainly that I admit that I probably read 90% e-galleys to print galleys now, advanced copies.
How are your eyes holding up on that?
They're terrible.
I hate net galleys. I need a hard copy. And
I can do it.
I know.
I got a reader that has kind of a soft light. My job description is to stare at a computer for 10 hours a day. So I don't really want to go in at night and see something on a screen if I can help it.
I'm so glad you said that because, you know, I have old eyes and I got diagnosed with diabetes after Girlfriend Weekend last year and I lost a lot of my vision at first. It's come back now, but, you know, reading a book is just so much easier for me than reading online. And I'm sick of the computer by the end of I'm like you, I've been on the computer now 24/7 for weeks, you
Well,
know.
I can't imagine what this week, the weekend. was like.
I think Saturday I was on for like 16 hours. So from the time I started out with talking to all the people that's making this work for me and helping me across the country. Mandy Haynes is in Florida. Douglas Thompson, who's doing the tech stuff, is in Jefferson, Texas. And then my publisher, Echo Garrett's in Atlanta, Georgia. And they've been helping me. But this morning, the link that I've had on my program, it didn't work. And everybody else had a different one. I can't figure it out. So I'll figure it out later. But
Well, I think, I mean, that, speaking of things, this past year, working from home became a cliche because
yes.
anyone who could do it was doing it.
Mhm.
But certainly coming out of that, that is going to be something that I think changes a lot. The model that we used, we have an office in Seattle where a lot of our folks work, but a lot of us in editorial we're on the East Coast. I'm in Saratoga Springs, New York. My boss is in New Hampshire. Our managing editors in Florida. One of our editors is in New Jersey. And in the morning, when we're sending out that issue at 8 o'clock in the morning, we're furiously emailing back and forth at the last minute, the 2 or 3 of us who are involved in that. Because every day you're essentially sending out the Shelf Awareness that goes to the Shelf Awareness Pro, which goes out every day, goes out to about 40,000 subscribers. And every typo, every mistake that you don't catch is magnified and irretrievable, essentially.
I know. And it's so funny is people really focus in on that. And I just wish, you know, everybody would realize how much work goes into what you're doing. I mean, can you imagine processing all the information coming in and getting it out on a daily basis for around the world? I mean,
You kind of have to do what a really good athlete does and have a short memory. So when that happens, you just stop. You can move to the next thing. You know.
It's so true. It's so true. So I can imagine though that advertising is up because really I had canceled Girlfriend Weekend and rolled it over to 2022 because I saw what was happening.
Yeah.
And then the authors started coming to me and saying, Kathy, please, you've got to do something. My book is dying on the vine, you know? And I said, I don't know how to do this. And they said, please, we'll all pay to come. And the authors did this year. They all paid to come because they wanted me to do it. And I couldn't have done it because I have literally had to pull this together in 2 months. And I cannot thank them enough, and I cannot work any harder than I will try this year to get their books out there. But so are more people advertising than they have?
I think 2020, I mean, 2020, I would say was on par with the miracle was that it was a good year. It didn't have to be a great year for most of us. No matter what we were doing, it was, can our business survive 2020? Not, is it going to get better? And so Shelf did survive 2020. You know, it wasn't a banner year because so many publishers had to watch their budgets too, because I mean, nobody knew. The really good thing is that reading became one of the, I mean, it wasn't officially called essential in a lot of places, but it became an essential product, an essential item for people in people's lives. I just last week, after pressure, when Nicola Sturgeon, the Scottish First Minister, declared a more intense lockdown. It was one of the first times I saw that she had added books to essential items list. So
Oh,
bookstores could do what they call click and collect, which is curbside pickup, which they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So, and in France, there's been pressure right from the start to make bookshops an essential service, and not so much in the US, but that, as often happens with us, it tends to be state by state, city by city, region by region.
well, I just learned recently that another bookstore opened in Texas, in Longview, Texas, called Book and Barrel. It's
Yeah.
a bar bookstore and it opened. So,
Yeah, I think that there were as many. John Mutter, my
yeah,
boss, the
John.
co-founder of Shelf, we were talking about this the other day, that as far as we can tell, there were at least as many bookshops that opened last year as closed. We're kind of shocked because we cover openings and closings,
Right.
obviously. I think I was shocked that there weren't far more closings than there were. And there were amazing number of people who took that leap, who opened their stores when they couldn't even open the doors for people to come in. They still opened.
I have a theory about that. If anybody gets into books for the money, they're in the wrong business. In fact, one of my authors even said, I decided that, I would go for a job that made less money. I'd become a writer. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was hilarious. But it's just a part of our passions, and we dig in our heels as long as we can. And I think the reason why the bookstores are popping up and lasting is that this is our passions.
Yeah.
And I know we have to make a living, but it's not the sole reason for opening a bookstore. I mean, it's bookstores are my dream. I still wish I had Beauty in the Book today because I loved it. I mean,
Well, maybe not today.
well, I
Maybe
would. I would still
later.
even love to have it today because the libraries are all closed, and I would definitely do curbside service. But I moved, and the area I'm in is a different area than Jefferson, Texas. So after my divorce, so it's a different demographic. But what what do you think that is going to happen? I mean, do you have any indication of what's going to happen in the future?
The hard thing about doing a prognostication is vaccines and COVID variants. It seems to me that the bookstores, this isn't the first time that, I'm speaking about independent bookshops, but I think it applies to, and I would say, I the big publishers will figure this out. They're corporations. I want them to do well, but I don't worry about them the way I worry about small publishers and independent bookstores. I think that if you survived last year and figured out a way to stay in business, you have adapted. I speaking about in terms of bookstores. I was working as a bookseller in the mid 90s when a company called Amazon debuted, and that was right at that moment bookstores were going to die because of Walden Books and
Yeah, I
B.
remember.
Dalton, and Barnes and Noble was in there, and Borders was sort of going to. I don't even remember when Borders started, but I think even at that point they'd moved beyond Ann Arbor and were getting. So we were going through the death knell then we went through it again when the economy crashed. There were any number of times when independent bookstores were over and they kept figuring stuff out. It was like, okay, this is what we have to work with. What do we do now? When everything hit this year, after having the year begin with the word Renaissance in the year, and then March and April hit, it would have been very easy to just crawl into a hole and say it's over, and yet so many stores and small publishers figured out other ways to get their books to people, to hold events like you did, to hold events, very ambitious kind of Zoom events, and
Yeah.
and then ironically, some of the smaller stores that couldn't get big authors before could suddenly get them by holding a Zoom event because they didn't have to fly them in. They
Exactly.
didn't have to.
That's exactly what happened to me because, David Valdez up in New York, he said, "You're going to do it virtual. How would you like me to do a writer's workshop?" And it's hard to get down here to East Texas, especially
Yeah.
when you have 2 or 3 plane rides. So, the Mighty Blaze was here. I've got you here. I will continue to do the virtual event, and we'll pray that we'll be able to. But I have an inclination that we're not opening up 2022 yet. I think the vaccines are coming way too slow. And right now around me, I've been here since Christmas in my house. I haven't been out. And it's rampant here in this area. I have 35 friends and family members dealing with it. It's scary.
Well, where I live in Saratoga Springs, a week or so ago was the first city in New York State to get the variant. So we now have not just COVID, but also the UK variant spreading around as well.
Oh no.
But it becomes, it does become a kind of new normal. I hate that term, but looking at, and I feel, it's luxurious. Like I can work from home. My wife retired last spring, just at the moment when it would have been, that she would have been teaching on Zoom. I'm very lucky, but I still feel that there are a lot of stories I need to share from a lot of other people who are facing a lot bigger challenges than I am professionally.
Yes.
Kathy, hi, this is Sherry. So I just wanted to say a couple of quick things on this subject. First of all, Robert, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You've been very, very good to Main Street Read. Shelf awareness has been wonderful. And I put a comment in the chat too.
Thank
you. At a time when so many of us were in crisis with having to close for COVID and things, you guys were right there and telling the story, and it was great. I think that really in a lot of ways, reading has increased for a lot of the stores now. A big part of that in the last year was, of course, political reads, and also anti-racism reads have been huge, huge, huge. So I think that we're developing kind of more educated readers, but I also wanted to comment on something that authors should know too, in moving forward, with booksellers in their regions. And that is that most of us, especially in the Southeast, we've had these talks in SIVA a lot, that we've discovered in doing these virtual reader meet writer events that a lot of us are doing, that we've brought out a whole new customer base that, unbeknownst to us, right, in our own ignorance, because we hadn't done the research or reached out, a lot of people just don't want to come out. They don't want to go to public events, whether they cannot or whether they're shut in. So most of us have agreed that long after this goes away, we'll continue virtual options. We're doing very limited live events, live clubs in store, but as Kathy knows, she's been to a few of our book club events. Our book clubs and our signings are all a combination of both now, and will continue to be to carry on that Zoom option, just to allow more people to be able to attend and enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it also, one of the things, I was a bookseller at the North Shire in Vermont for 15 years. And one of the constant management team conversations we had was, how do we get people through the door who feel like they're not, like they'll be looked down upon for even walking into a bookstore? How do we get people in who aren't comfortable walking through the front door and standing there and thinking everybody's saying, what are they doing here? And I think the online option has given people who are great readers, but we're intimidated about that, crossing that threshold.
That is a great point, Sherry. And that's why I've always support Sherry. Sherry's been a Pulpwood Queen, and she's gotten me into a lot of events, and I can't thank her and her bookstore enough for everything she's doing to provide this virtual, everybody's ordering from her, and I'm grateful for her bookstore to do that. And Murder by the Book has been doing it down in Houston too. So we are thankful, but I also think that I don't know about all you two, but I've become more productive because I've had less outside things taking me away from task. And, I have grown, the book club is growing so big because authors are signing up left and right. Everybody thinks we're an author book club, but that's not true. Most of my book club members are, I'm the book club of the underdogs. They're introverts and they love to. So this has opened up a wonderful world for them because they can sit at home silently and enjoy hearing the authors speak. And it's easier to connect with the authors. And so Sherry and I are coordinating so our book club meetings won't be the same time or night. And I'm doing that with all my bloggers now across the country. We're going to have 3 more bloggers come on board for 2022. And we're coordinating together all these events so that we can help each other and kind of join hands, so to speak, to keep us all going during this time. So we don't know what's ahead.
Sherry,
And in
Sherry,
a
do
weird
you?
sort of way, I'm sorry, go ahead.
A question for Sherry. Have you noticed a lot of people coming to your events who, from really far away, from other parts of the country, from other countries?
No, we don't get tourists yet. Very, very little tourism. Authors are not traveling. They're only doing virtual. So the only
I
ones.
meant virtual.
Virtual.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We
Yeah.
could do a lot more with virtual. Yeah, with other markets. I've got one next week, a couple from California. So yeah, definitely that helps those that can't travel. But also, with everyone having to do the Zoom events and frankly having to run their lives. So there's on Zoom, whether it's school or whatever, that's actually been a bonus for reading a physical book too, because people can't wait to get off that screen and read a real book. So I know that the publishers have had a hard time, delivering physical galleys, but I can tell you those that are getting read and recommended more so, because the last thing we want to do after we look at the screen all day is, like Kathy said before, is sit there with another screen. No,
yeah, true.
I hate to say this, but our time is up. We've got to do it longer next time, Bob. Longer. But we have Carol Fitzgerald up next with Cassandra King, Pat Conroy's widow. So they're on board. So we're going to go to them. If you have any questions for Bob, how do they reach you? Or
actually, the easiest thing is it's either rgray@shelf-awareness.com, or you can just go to the website and we're all there. So you could just get my email link there as well on Shelf Awareness.
I cannot thank you enough. And I look forward to everything that you keep posting. So we're going to have to go on to our next author, our next the book reporter.
Hi, Carol.
And there she is, Carol Fitzgerald. Say hi to Bob. I love the tiara. Well, we're going to, you're on mute, Carol.
I just have to tell you that this is because I was taking down the Christmas tree, and I made this when I took down the Christmas tree 10 minutes ago. So there you go. There's my idea of a crown. Okay.
Well, it's absolutely, you're a rock star. I mean, come on. Tell us about Book Reporter before we get started with Sandra, and give a little introduction to everything you've been doing for years. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. So great to see you as always, Kathy. I started Book Reporter in 1996 with one site on AOL, which, remember when it was like You've Got Mail, those days. And we started because at the time, the only way you could find about an author was on the back of the book. They were born here, they were married to this, and they had a dog. That was about it. And what we wanted people to do is get to know authors better. So right now, our websites are bookreporter.com and readinggroupguides.com, which is for book clubs. And beyond that, I also have an author series called Book Reporter Talks To, where I interview authors, and we're on both a video and podcast. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And also we've started doing something called Bookachino Live that happens every month on a Wednesday afternoon. Next one, I believe, is February 10th at 2:00 in the afternoon. You can sign up on the site. We talk about the books coming out those next 4 weeks. Given that we know a lot of libraries are still closed, we know that people can't get out the way they could. We talk about the next 4 weeks because our feeling is right now, you care what you're having about dinner tonight. you're not even thinking about what you're having tomorrow night. So we got to be in the moment.
Right.
And then we'll tease books out a little bit further. And we video those for anybody who's working all day and wants to log on at night. So
I've
that's
got to
what-
check that out. That's fantastic. Do we have
Okay.
Sandra here yet?
I see her. I see
Yay!
her.
Bring
camera.
her on board. Bring her into the conversation. And you can take me off. I want to put these two girls up.
Trying to
I'm
find her.
counting.
We got a lot of people on board this morning. Thank you so much for doing this, Carol, Cassandra. You all are awesome. This is just made my Sunday. Okay.
I'm excited.
Yeah, we're really happy about being able to do this. So you guys be sure and check out her websites. And what was again the main one where we can sign up for everything?
It's bookreporter.com.
Book Reporter.
Bookreporter.com. Mhm.
Yes, there she is, the queen. Before I leave, I want to just put you guys up. I just want to say that Cassandra King Conroy I picked more of her books than any author on this in my 21 years. So everybody knows that Pat Conroy has always been my favorite, but this woman's books have been picked over and over and over. And this last one, Tell Me a Story, ties into our It's All About the Story theme. So bye-bye, let you girls talk.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah.
Cassandra, so great to see you. Are you still on mute? I think you have to unmute.
In the left-hand corner at the bottom.
Story of my life is muting or unmuting.
Yeah.
There we
yeah.
go.
There we go. I'm
Biggest line
sorry.
of the year.
Didn't even notice.
Well, you know, I wrote this like long intro for you, but you know what? Everybody knows who you are. So I
Nah.
don't need to do that. I don't need
You
to
don't
do
need
that.
to do that. No.
I have to tell you that I first read The Sunday Wife years ago, and I can actually remember where I read that book sitting outside by the pool one summer. I know exactly where the chair was sitting. And whenever I see your name, I remember that moment. Love that book. I've got Moonrise. I was trying to find the books in the house today to put them all behind me. But last night I finished Tell Me a Story, and it is just absolutely wonderful on so many levels. I'm so looking forward to talking to you about it. So let's start. What spurred you to write this book? What drove you to do it?
Well, I didn't, Carol, I didn't really sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to write a memoir about my time with Pat. Because if I had, I would have waited, you know, to have more, I think, time between his death and when I started working on the book. But I was actually working on a cookbook at the time that had a lot of stories about mine and Pat's time together. And I had written some stuff, you know, for Southern Living and other magazines like that were also the same, talking about Pat and I cooking together and this sort of stuff. So after his death, and I wanted to go back to work, I felt like, and I promised him that's what I would do. I just found that these stories kept coming back, kept flooding back, and it was like I needed to share these. I needed to record them, and some of them weren't appropriate for a cookbook. Had nothing to do, you know. It was evolving to become our story, our love story, our time together. So I just shifted my focus, you know, to the memoir.
And you know, it's so interesting. I remember reading, and I've watched a lot of interviews for you talking about this book, and the editor said she read the original manuscript and there wasn't enough of you in it. And what I think I loved about this is it's about both of you. It's about these, you know, the good times, the bad times, the times when you're having a squabble and the times you're madly in love with each other. And holding back on you, was it because you were really trying to remember him, or what was it at the beginning that had you not talking you?
Well, it's just part of my makeup. Pat's, if you've read the book, as you have, you know that his nickname for me was Helen Keller, because he said, you know, I was so silent. Now I muted myself. I didn't talk. I didn't share, and he was right. I'm always been pretty bad about that. I'm a very private person, and I don't open up to people easily. So so that was, you know, just, you know, a natural part of my makeup. And I didn't really even realize that I had done that until my editor, Carrie Farron at William Morrow, called me after having read the manuscript and said, I like it and I love what you're saying about Pat and so forth, but I know absolutely nothing about you after reading this. And so I think I may have gotten a little carried away when I went back to it and started telling these, more personal things about myself. Then it sort of came all pouring out, and I actually wrote about some things that I've never written about and rarely talk about, before. And so I found that very liberating. It certainly it reinforced what Pat was always saying, that telling your story is freeing, no matter how difficult it is, that it's keeping it bottled up, that causes the problems and the sort of emotional blockage. So then you don't want to talk about it. It becomes buried, and when it's out there, it's, it opens up more discussion with other people. I've heard from so many readers who, have shared some of their personal stuff as well.
Well, I know Carrie, so I can just picture that editorial conversation. I
Yeah.
just picture her like, you are missing. And I can picture her being very diplomatic about it, but you have to be there. I can picture it, but you have to get yourself into the story. And I think that's what I loved, is that you were honest about the fact that life for you and Pat, alone and together, had tough times. And I think that not romanticizing everything, but talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly are things that people learn from, because everybody sees the person who walks in the room and walks on the stage, and they forget about the person who had to get on the plane, the person had to do all these other things. And even the times you're describing that you two were in different places because you were on tour and he was coming back from tour. I don't think readers quite understand that that's like a lot of the part of the author's life. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you were both writers. What was that like? You were both living with other characters as well as yourselves. There were a lot of people in that house.
Yeah, absolutely. And Carol, it's not something I could have imagined before. What it would be like to live with another writer, but because I had not been encouraged with my writing, and I think that had a lot to do with women of my generation. If you want to be, quote, a writer, that's a nice little hobby, just as long as it doesn't interfere with, your real duties as a wife and a mother, even if you have a career, you're teaching or whatever, just, nice little hobby. It was such a new experience to me to have Pat, who encouraged my writing so passionately and so forcefully. And he really pushed me on, to do a lot more than I think I ever would have done without that sort of encouragement. So it was great. And it was, also to have someone to talk writing and to talk about the books that we read, and this sort of stuff. And when when Pat and I got together, I was just starting my writing career. And I didn't give myself permission to do this till after my kids, there again, my generation, after my kids were practically gone and out of the house and so forth. But Pat, I was just starting. Pat was at the height of his career as a writer. So I did learn a lot from his experiences. He was able to tell me about what book tour is really like, how demanding it is, how exhausting, and how the real reward came from not how many books you sell or where you get on the list or anything like that, but from meeting your readers and connecting with people. So it worked so well for us that at one time I thought about starting a dating agency, maybe, and only writers could date other writers, because, I think what people don't realize too, and I know that in past relationships and marriages, Pat and I talked about this a lot, with sympathy and compassion for our partners, that a writer lives in his or her own head,
Mhm.
And we're off somewhere. If we're not on tour, we're composing or writing, in our head all the time. And so it caused difficulties in former relationships, with my former marriage with me, and it with Pat as well. Understandably. So two writers, though, living together, I think, get that about
Mhm.
each other.
I think also he encouraged you to go on tour. I mean, somebody else might have said, "Oh, you're going to be away." He understood the importance of
Absolutely.
going out to meet the readers. I did love the line, because I've had this happen to me when I was traveling a lot more, is you don't know what city you're in when you
Oh.
wake up in the morning. And I love that he said you need to write like the city on the room key, so you knew like where you were. And I remember one time getting a wake up call in a hotel, and they said it's 7 a.m. And I said, "And what city am I in?" And I think they probably said deranged woman in 326, but you really don't know. And I remember landing at airports, and they'd say the baggage coming in, and I'm like, but where was I? Like, where had I been? So I knew it's like, I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's like you want to call somebody and say, where was I supposed to be right now? So I love that part, where that little gentle kind of thing, which people don't think about.
No, and I thought he was, Pat was typical Irishman. He was full of blarney in a lot of ways, but he was wonderful storyteller. He sometimes would not let facts stand in the way of a good story, something like that. So when he was telling me this, what to expect on tour, and said, be sure and write down what city you're in, and your room number and all this stuff on your key when they give you, the little envelope thing it comes in and so forth. I thought, oh yeah, right. That'll never happen, not with me. And sure enough,
But I was
it
like,
did more than once.
is it Nashville or Memphis? Is it country or blues? I mean, I just love those kind of lines. They were like so great. So your nickname was King Ray. How did that come about? Because I was going King Ray, King Ray.
Oh, well, that was just Pat. Now my married name before it was Ray, and Pat thought when he first saw my name, I gave him a card. He thought it was hyphenated, one of those hyphenated, women last name. So I have more nicknames than anybody in the world, but that was one that was unique to him.
Yeah, he definitely was calling you that. I just thought that was, it was just really, really super funny. The other thing is, okay, you're both writers, you're both writing in the house, you're both, understanding each other's writing. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Favorite book of his? What's your favorite book?
Boy, you really did put me on the spot with that, because I really truly love his books. I did let's see, what about 4 he had written before I met him. He was about to go on tour for Beach Music when we met, or he actually was still editing Beach Music. But I guess I would have to say The Prince of Tides, because I think it has so much of everything that's in his other books that I love.
It's like encompasses everything there.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what's going on. On your website, you've got wonderful photos of your life together. And for anyone who's reading the book, I encourage you to go out there and take a look at the photos, because you read about these people that you make very real. I mean, we see everything that's going on, but it's nice to be able to go out and do that. So I applaud you for putting together a nice, really wonderful photo.
Thank you for saying that, because they forgot to leave. Carrie will tell you, my editor, that that she had not done a memoir before.
Oh.
And so they didn't think about photographs until everything was all set up. And of course, I hadn't done a memoir before either. So we decided that we put a little note in the back saying, but the photos, not all of them would work, but the photos are in the paperback copy.
Oh, okay. I was wondering about that because I'm reading hardcover. So I was just curious if that was what ended up happening. But okay, so the website's got that. Was this always the title? Tell me a story.
Oh yeah, I never considered anything else because that just said so much to me about Pat. He was, as I said, just fabulous storyteller. Nobody, I don't think, would would argue with that. He was every bit as good a speaker as he was a writer, which is so unfair. You know, nobody
People
should
do
be
one
so
or the other.
gifted.
Yeah.
Yeah, one or the other, please. But it was also the way that he related to people. He connected through story. And when he met people, when he first met me, he wanted to know my story. Every time he met someone, he wanted to know their story. And there would be something in that story that would be a military brat like him. Unfortunately, they might have had a difficult father, you know, or had come from domestic abuse, you know, just military, all sorts. He would find some way of connecting through story with everyone that he met. So it had to be Tell Me a Story.
Yeah, perfect title. And I do love because you've also translated about his friendships with people, his friendships with Bernie, his friendships with so many other people. And I think that was so much a big part of his life besides the characters that lived in his head. And I think you introduced us to a lot of the characters from his life as much as those that were on the page. And I think that that's what makes the book really special is we meet your relationship, but we also meet how he felt about other people as well.
Yeah, Pat was a great friend. He was a wonderful friend to people. Now he might go for months without speaking to someone that he considered a very, very close friend. But part of that was, and this is true of all writers, and I think all writers can identify with this. And I know we have several writers on the session today. Is there's only so much time that we have, and you know you're working on a book, or you're promoting your book, or you've got to have some family time and this sort of stuff, and nurturing friendships is something you just have to take the time to do it at some point. I'm terrible at it. I will tell my friend, I'm sorry, I haven't called him forever, and I haven't forgotten that you had surgery or whatever. I mean, it can be something like that. But Pat was a really good friend to a lot of people. He especially connected with upcoming writers, younger writers, because he had been there, and he understood their difficulties. He would always say he was lucky, when he got his first. I don't think luck had a lot to do with that. I mean, it always has something to do with. But I'm sure that there was a New York agent named Julian Bach that saw a very rare talent when he got Pat's first book, first book published, The Water is Wide, which is just, see, I really hesitate when someone asks me what my favorite book
okay,
is.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, that one is way up there. I love that book.
I'm gonna have to jump in, you guys, because we have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
And
Well,
I'm going to tell you that my favorite book is The Sunday Wife, Cassandra. And if you all haven't read her books, go to Main Street Reads and get them all because they're fabulous. But it's 1:58 and we've got Marley Rusoff coming up next. So I hope you'll stick around and hear the conversation with Marley and Claire Fullerton. So you want to wrap it up, Carol?
Sure. I just want to say, I'm sure you've talked to tons of book clubs. If book clubs want to reach out to you and have you be part of their conversation, they go to your website? And they can get in touch with
Website,
you?
I have a Facebook page as well, but I've just answered while, waiting to connect to you just a few minutes ago. I answered like 3 requests that came through my website for Zooming with book clubs. So I'm glad to do that.
I highly recommend this. I highly recommend this for a book club discussion. There's many ways you can go. Talking to you would be fabulous with it. And I just was trying to think about what Pat would have been like during a pandemic. He would have been Zooming with everybody.
Yes,
Oh my God.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I
Thank
so
you,
appreciate
Carol.
talking to you. It's been too
It was
long.
fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Sandra. We're going to be talking more because we're going to get you on our online book club and other things throughout the year. So we're still going to be in touch. So you take care, good friend, and hopefully I'll be back in Beaufort soon. Okay.
Better, but we
So,
look for you.
y'all, we are going to be leaving this Zoom and going to the next one for Marley at 2:00. So in 1 minute, we've got to move over to the next Zoom. Thank you, Carol. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Sandra. And we'll see you in the next Zoom meeting, everybody.